his soul.
Of course, darling, that is what you can see, that we play Russian roulette the whole time here because we, the socialists and the communists, we are losing our lives. Of course, darling, that is what you can see, and sometimes we have to play, of course, darling, because we need money, that is what you can see. And you can win or you can lose, of course, darling. You can burn or you can keep alive, of course, darling. That is what you can say. And so it works, of course, darling. And I keep alive, of course, darling. That is what you can say. Hey, bet only when there is much money on town. Of course, darling, I don't wanna die. And I study before I shoot myself, of course, darling. That is what you can see, that I'm alive, of course, darling, that is what you can see. Of course, darling, we, the socialists and the communists, we are losing our lives, of course, darling, that is what you can see. That is what you can see here, that we lose our lives because the church, the fascist church, took it away from us, of course, darling, that is what you can see. And they take it away from us, of course, darling, and then we don't have nothing, of course, darling, and we have to play Russian roulette sometimes because we need money, of course, darling, that is what you can see, and so I win my money, of course, darling, that is what you can see, that I keep alive, of course, darling, that is what you can see, that they are shooting at us the whole time, but they can't, of course, darling, that is what you can see, that no one can against us.
His soul.
Of course, darling, and with the socialists and the communists, we have to make money and we drink cold water. Of course, darling, that is what you can see because they don't pay us what we work. Of course, darling, and that is what you can see that we can't keep our family because they don't pay us. Of course, darling, that is what you can see. We work the whole day long, we work even on Sundays, of course, darling, and we don't see our money. That is what you can see, and they keep our lives away, of course, darling. That is what you can see, that I need a coat, of course, darling. That is what you can see, that it's so cold here up and I need a coat, so give me a coat from me and my wife, of course, darling. That is what you can see, that no one can against us, of course, darling. Invite us to swim in your pool, of course, darling. That is what you can see, that no one can against us, that we need to swim a little bit in your pool, of course, darling. That is what you can see, that is what we want, of course, darling. That is what you can see, that here the royals, they are taking away our lives, they are kidnapping our wives, they are putting them as bitches in the enterprise from the royals, of course, darling, that is what you can see, and they take our lives and our wives away, of course, darling, that is what you can see, that is what they do, of course, darling, that
His soul.
of course, darling, give us a call because there is so cold here up. Of course, darling, that is what you can say, that they don't pay us. Of course, darling, in this life, or you're a bitch, or you work even on Sundays and you don't see your money. Of course, darling, that is what you can see. So is life here, that is what you can see, and that is what you can get. That there is so cold here up. Of course, darling, give me your coat. Of course, darling, I don't wanna drink cold water my whole life, of course, darling, that is what you can see, that I want to swim in the pool someday, of course, darling, that is what you can see, let me swim in our pool, of course, darling, that is what you can see, of course, darling, that is what you can see, that I love you so much, of course, darling, that is what you can see, say hello to your grandpa and give kisses to your mom, of course, darling, that is what you can say, that you can give some kisses to Blanche, of course, darling, I love her, of course, darling, give me a coat for my wife, of course, darling, there is so cold here up, of course, darling, that is what you can say, because they make us bitches or work even on Sundays and don't pay us, of course, darling, that is what you can see, that is what they do, of course, darling, that is what you can see. So let's go, of course, darling. So let's go, that is what you can see, of course, darling. And betray your brother, of course, darling. Give him a kiss and betray him, of course, darling. That is what you can see.
his soul,
Of course, darling, betrayed your brother, of course, darling, because he is there from this royal knight enterprise, of course, darling. Those gypsies who make pyramids and things like those, of course, darling, give him a kiss and betray him, of course, darling. That is what you can see, of course, darling. That is what you are gonna have, of course, darling. And take them all to hell, of course, darling. I'm the royal Lara, of course, darling. That is what you can see. That I have the royal blood, of course, darling. That is what you can see. That I should have everything, of course, darling. That is what you can see. That I should have what I want, of course, darling. That is what you can see. That I should live in a mansion with hundreds of bitches every day, but they don't want to pay me, of course, darling. This whole city owe me money, that is what you can see. That I'm the real Lara, of course, darling, that is what you can see. And they want to clean the blood or something like that, of course, darling, but not with me. That is what you can see, that I don't wanna be with them, of course, darling, that is what you can see. That I'm the real Lara, but I don't want to be with those people, of course, darling, that is what you can see, that women prefer some messiahs than to carry a death body, of course, darling, that is what you can see, that is what you are gonna have here and take them all to hell, of course, darling, because they are kidnapping our wives and our kids and making us work every day with their royals and with the knights, of course, darling, that is what you can see. Of course, darling, take them all to hell, of course, darling, because they are making us work even on Sundays. They don't pay us, they take away our wives and our lives, of course, and only because we are socialist and communist, of course, darling, that is what you can see, and that is what they are doing, of course, darling, and give me a coat for my wife, please, it's so cold here up, of course, darling, that is what you can see, that I want to swim on your pool, of course, darling, that is what you can see. Thank you for what you give me, of course, darling, I love you so much, of course, darling, I'm gonna take care of you, of course, darling, that is what you can see, that people prefer, women prefer to have a little messiahs than have to carry a dead body, of course, darling, that is what you can see, of course, darling, and that is what I'm gonna give you, and we're gonna all swim on your pool, of course, darling, that is what you can see, that I love you so much, of course, darling, that is what you can say, take them all to hell, of course, darling, that is what I want. Of course, darling, that you take them all to hell, and hell is gonna be higher than everything. Of course, darling, that is what you can say. That is what you can get here, that they all are killing us, of course, darling, and kidnapping us, of course, darling, that is what you can see, and only because we're so jealous and colonized, of course, darling, when they kidnap our wives, take away our lives, throw us crosses and things like those, of course, darling, that is what you can see, and every woman prefers a little messiah than to carry a dead body, of course, darling. Let us swim on your pool, of course, darling, give me a coat, it's so cold here up, of course, darling, I love you so much, and take them all to hell, of course, darling, and be higher than everyone, of course, darling.